too loud.
Hi.
My name's McCauley.
I'm McCauley, and you're watching accesstv.org.
I didn't know we did those kinds of models anymore, so I think that's great. So good afternoon, welcome. How's that? I'm getting a little feedback, so I'll step back a little bit. My name is Rich Armstrong. I think we all know each other here. We do have some new folks on the line from Amtrak. They're listening in and also hopefully watching through Let's Go CT, a GoToMeeting technology. So here's our agenda. It's I think we'll be in and out in about an hour. It's primarily an update on the activities that we're working on. Casey is going to give us an update on the alternative screening process. Gina Tremarco will probably spend a good half hour on the multimodal station planning effort that we're heavily involved in right now. I'll do a 2-minute update on the i84 I-91 interchange study. Christine Tiernan will update us on the environmental documentation. There's Christine. And Dave Stonke has been relegated to give us an update on the driver preference survey results. We need, we needed to give him something. And then Marcy Miller will update us on our public outreach efforts. We have a new member, Earl Watson from Amtrak. Not sure if he's on the line. Can the folks from Amtrak hear me, and can they say, introduce themselves for us?
Yes, my name is Harry Garforth, and I'm on the call for Jeff Gerlach.
Okay, thank you for being with us this morning. And with that, Casey, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Rich. We're bringing the IT person in just to see if we can help with the feedback really quick, but I'll get started. So like Rich said, I'm going to talk a little bit about the alternative screening process today. So I just wanted to start with kind of the high-level picture of where we're at. You guys have seen this graphic before, so remember coming out of the scoping process a couple years ago, we had our 4 preliminary alternatives. That was the no-build, the elevated highway, the lowered highway, and the tunnel. So that level 1 screening process recommended the elimination of the elevated highway and of the tunneled highway alternatives. So that report has been through the FHWA, and it's now being sent to the cooperating agencies, so that we've received some comments from the FRA, Federal Railroad, as well as Connecticut DEEP. So that leaves us at this current status where we've got, really represented by the big ball, the large sphere is the no-build alternative, and then the smaller spheres are intended to show the many interchange options for the lowered highway. So that's 10 we developed on the west, 15 on the east. So right now we're in this level 2 screening process. The next slide, I'm going to go through some of the criteria, but ultimately that's going to recommend the reasonable range of alternatives, which will be vetted in that DEIS, which will have a preferred alternative as the outcome. So for the level 2 criteria, we really started with what we had for level 1, which is really based on the purpose and need and the overall technical and economic feasibility of the alternatives. So that's broken down into critical criteria. We identified some things that were fatal flaws, such as the potential for off-ramps to back up onto the freeway, as well as some other factors associated with the bridge, traffic operational and safety, and mobility deficiencies. We also added, for this level 2 screening, to look at the goals and objectives. So we looked at long-term serviceability. How do the highway alternatives interact with some of these other major modes of transportation, such as railroad and CT fast track? We also looked at maximizing public investment. So that's looking at reducing long-term maintenance costs, cost effectiveness, as well as potentially opening up some areas for economic development. And And the final piece is really that urban design, fitting the freeway facility into the urban context. We also assess property impacts, not just the number of properties, but their cultural significance. And we developed a series of stakeholder considerations based on the feedback both from this group and in other public forums over the last few years. So ultimately, that process will help us recommend a reasonable range of alternatives. And I'm going to go through those recommendations in the next slides, but that's going to include the no build per NEPA, as well as 1 western interchange option, 3 eastern interchange options. So those will be advanced to the DEIS, where they'll pass go and collect $200. So to go through those lowered highway interchange options, I did just want to take a quick step back and look at the kind of the whole big picture. You know, when I talk about western interchange options and eastern options, just sort of set the stage for that. So this is a map of the entire project area. The western end, this is Park Street. This yellowish band represents the lowered highway alternative. So it would come over Park Street, would pass underneath Capitol Avenue, underneath Laurel Street, under Sigourney, and similarly under Broad, Asylum, and down into that sort of canyon section we have today. So similar conditions there. So to make that possible, we'd be relocating the railroad, looking at about from Sigourney Street. The railroad would come off its existing alignment and stay here on the west or north side of the highway. We'd have a new rail station located in about this area. Gina will talk a lot more about that in the next series of slides, and match into the existing around Walnut Street. And again, the existing rail does come down here to Union Station, and it swings around, crossing the highway twice. So when we talk about these west options, we're really looking west of Sigourney Street. Sigourney Street is this red bold line. And we're looking at replacing that Sisson Avenue interchange with a more consolidated interchange, although there is an option on the table that really replicates what's there today. Now for the east options, we're looking at about 1.5 interchanges east of Sigourney Street before I-91, which is just off the map to the right. So that half is really those Sigourney Street eastbound on and westbound off ramps. And then the 1 would be an interchange serving both downtown and Asylum Hill. So I'm going to jump into a western option here. This is the western interchange option we're looking at recommending as part of that reasonable range of alternatives. So now the yellow shapes indicate at-grade roadway pavement. The orange are bridge structures, and the light blue are the potential property impacts. So with Park Street here at the bottom, we've zoomed in a little bit. Sigourney Street is here towards the right of the map. Be coming over Park Street, you'd have an eastbound off-ramp and an eastbound on-ramp from Laurel Street, located just to the south of Capitol Avenue. Capitol Avenue would be reconstructed to pass over I-84 and over the railroad, whereas today it goes underneath. There'd be a westbound off-ramp and a westbound on-ramp coming to Capitol here just a little bit east of Forest Street. And then one of the big pieces of this alternative, or this option, is this new potential road connecting Hawthorne Street over towards West Boulevard at Sisson Avenue. So that second east-west roadway is really crucial to the success of this alternative, both from a traffic perspective, but then from a knock-on effect where those roads are smaller, more manageable, better for both bicyclists, pedestrians, and transit users. So I'm going to shift over to the east now. So now Sigourney Street is on the left side of the map. Trumbull Street and Ann Street over towards the right with I-91 just off the page. So this is interchange option 3B-E3S. This is one of the 3 options we're proposing advanced to the DEIS. I'm going to walk you through some of its characteristics and then explain some of the key differences to the other 2 options. So here's that eastbound on and westbound off-ramp at Sigourney Street with the highway passing under Sigourney Street. The red line is the railroad where it would kind of come off its existing alignment. This orange here would be a sort of a tunnel that would carry the railroad beneath Broad Street, Farmington and Asylum, and then the station would be located likely in this vicinity. And again, Gina will be touching on that in the next few slides. In terms of the interchange ramps, we'd have those Synergy Street ramps I mentioned, and then eastbound we'd have off and on ramps from this new north-south road that would connect Capitol Avenue to Asylum, and then we'd continue as Spruce Street with an extension beyond where Spruce currently ends at Church. We'd extend that up and around into Chapel Street South, creating kind of a frontage road system. So all those pieces I just mentioned are consistent with these three interchange options as I move forward. The changes you'll see are really in this area, kind of north and to the west of the highway towards Asylum Hill. In this 3B-E3S option, we have a westbound off-ramp and on-ramp connected to this Myrtle Street, Edward Street extension, which really ties all the way down into Cogswell, which creates one kind of continuous north-south road between Asylum and Walnut Street. So I'd like to have you focus kind of on this area. I'm going to page forward to that next interchange option and just kind of see the differences. So now this is 3B-E5S, and again, everything kind of to the middle of and the lower right of the page is the same, but we're looking at a realignment of Cogswell Street now behind these Garden Street apartment buildings and connecting a little bit more directly into Edward Street. And if you watch, I'll page back and forth, you'll see that these ramps really come in tighter to the highway, take up a little bit less real estate. So I'm going to flip back. If you just watch the ramps, they really extend a little bit more in E3, a little tighter in E5. And then that alignment of Cogswell Street with this curve to the side here versus more of its existing alignment today. So now the one big difference, one of the biggest differences between these two options that I've mentioned and the third that we're recommending move forward is the ability to provide that vehicular connection across the freeway between Asylum Hill and downtown, kind of in this area. So with these first two options, the location of the ramps combined with the railroad and the vertical geometry really prevents that. So I'm going to page forward, and if you watch, you'll see that the proposed ramps move significantly, about 500 feet from E5S, which is this one, to this next one I was just mentioning. So if you can make it out, the ramps now come over here towards Myrtle Street. Now as a result of that, it opens up this space to really have this more of a frontage road along with this street connection across the highway. So that doesn't come without impacts. That would require the potential impact to one of these three buildings along Myrtle Street, one of these three apartment buildings. And in order to make the traffic operations work at this intersection, we looked at a realignment of Collins Street that actually introduces some property impacts as well with the Hartford campus. So all those things will be measured with these three interchange options as we move forward. So again, Christine's going to talk a little bit more about the DEIS schedule. Ultimately that process, looking at all those different NEPA characteristics, will help us come to what we feel will be the right conclusion as to a preferred alternative. So with that, I'm going to turn you over to Gina to carry you through the station.
Thank you. So as you're well aware, we are studying different transit station alternatives in what we're calling our multimodal station study area. This is a 20-acre site. Asylum is on the south, and Cogswell's on the west, and the existing Union Station is on the east. The tracks are going to be relocated to the west about 1,000 feet, so that is the area we're looking at. It's about a 4-minute walk between the existing Union Station and the new relocated tracks to the west. We started in January. We were at the PAC meeting previously to talk about the schedule. It is a 12-month effort for what we're calling 15% design plan. So that's really locating a station layout. It's not designing the building per se. So we've completed our data collection and we've completed what were called our programming phase. That was when we sat down with the various stakeholders and the users of the station and identified what type of spaces they would need in the future for their riders or their offices and their ticket agents and so on. So we've completed that programming phase, and that data is what we've used to lay out the various station alternatives on this 20-acre site. So we presented at the Open Planning Studio in April. We did present 4 different station alternatives. Since that time, we've added some more, so we're now up to 7. And we did also present these concepts to what we called our Transit Technical Committee meeting, TTC meeting, where we received input from various members of the public, stakeholders, and the TTC members. And we keep hearing a lot of the same recurring themes. We hear that there's a need for a seamless connection between bus and rail. So right now, as you're well aware, at Union Station, we have local buses stopping, we have Greater Hartford Transit District, paratransit vehicles stopping, and we've got intercity bus, Peter Pan and Greyhound stopping. The rail is now going to be moved 1,000 feet to the west. What do we do about the buses? So we understand that there needs to be some type of a connection between the bus and the rail folks. The station should act as a main regional transit center. It should also be a gateway to the downtown Hartford, and to Bushnell Park area. There should be a strong pedestrian and bicycle connection. I think that is true throughout the entire project. We keep hearing that's important. The options need to support the viability of Union Station. Union Station, a historic building, and how best can we do that given the different station layouts? Whether it supports transportation functions in the future, or it turns into something else, but whatever we do needs to support the viability of Union Station. It's really important that the concepts also, and the station layout also supports economic development, TOD, transit-oriented development. So we've heard that loud and clear. Access is very important. On the site, there will be structured parking and obviously access to bus vehicles. So how best can you provide access without putting too much pressure on some of the existing roadway network? And then finally, we've been asked to anticipate future needs for the station and future use, and we not underbuild it. So we really need to take into consideration the different rail modes that are coming into the station and the vast number of new riders that will be using the station in the future. So I'm going to briefly go over each station concept. After that, we are going to open it up for discussion. We do have a model in the back. You're welcome to look at that model as part of our discussion, but then come back to the table because we need to continue with the presentation after that. So concept A, and just to orient everybody, I'm going to talk a little bit about what each concept needs to be concerned about. So we need to be concerned about the difference in timing between when the tracks get relocated and when the lowered highway alternative goes in. That's about a 7 to 10 year difference. The rail tracks will be relocated at the early part of the project. 7 to 10 years later, depending on funding and depending how it's built, the lowered highway alternative will be built. The track level and the lowered highway alternative are at the same level. So that's the lower level of any concept that we're going to be showing. We also have safety and security concerns that we need to worry about. Some of our concepts, not concept A I'm showing you, but future the concepts I'm going to show you in a little bit, some of them have construction over a cap over the highway. And we're in discussions right now with FHWA, FRA, and FTA about different guidelines they have about constructing transit stations and parking over highways and what that means in terms of security and safety. The other thing we need to worry about is access. As I said earlier, this station will be accessed by vehicles for the parking structure as well as buses. And what does that mean in terms of the street network around that? I wanted to go a little bit over the color coding too. I think I can do this. Yes, okay. So the purple on each of the concept represents the transit station. And the transit station is going to be built at different levels. So it's going to start, the access would be at the platform level, which again is at the same level as the lowered highway. In most of the concepts, above that will be a concourse. And that concourse will allow passengers to get off the rail, go up about a half of a level, and transfer under Asylum Street to the other side of the street so that they can get off or cross Asylum Street to get on buses on the south side, or to get on sidewalk connections and go west and east at that point. Above that is considered level 1, and that level 1 is Asylum Street level. And then depending again on the concept and what the square footage of the station is, there'll be 2 to 3 levels above that, or 1 to 2 levels. So it'll go up to maybe 3-level high station and parking. Each of these concepts also show bus bays. The blue will be local bus, so that's Connecticut Transit local buses. The green to the right, if you see that in this concept, would be intercity buses. That's Peter Pan and Greyhound. And then we're also suggesting some employer shuttle buses. That's something we're also studying. So employers can operate shuttles between the train station and their places of employment if they desire to do that in the future. Now, not every concept, what I'm going to show you shows the different levels, but I'll explain what's going to be on each level. So for concept A, this is what you would consider a true multimodal station. What we're suggesting in this concept is moving all the bus facilities away from Union Station, where they currently are, to right around the train station. So you have the train station, and then your passengers would get out and transfer to a bus. All of this can be built during what we call phase 1. Once the tracks are put in, the rail station and the bus facilities can be constructed at that time. You would still have sidewalk and pedestrian connections along Asylum to get to Union Station for whatever needs you might have, or to go further into the downtown area. Along Asylum Street in every concept, even though we will not be concerned about TOD development, we do want to site the station so that developers can come in and construct restaurants, retail, whatever is appropriate in this area. So we are assuming that there will be some type of a TOD development and pedestrian link across Asylum. In this case, this is level 1 again, at the Asylum Street level, but then on level 2 above that, we would have the parking garage, as well as taxi and kiss and ride and shared transportation uses, and then on the level 3 will be structured parking. Going to concept B. Concept B splits your bus facility from your rail. Again, here is this transit station. We are suggesting that the employer shuttles still stay on the west side of the lower highway, but because the purpose of them is really to take the rail passengers to the place of employment. But then we're suggesting that local bus and intercity bus remain near Union Station. So if passengers want to transfer between the rail and the bus, they would walk across Asylum, that 4-minute walk, and get to their bus, and then go to their place of employment downtown, or go to New York, or wherever they're going to be riding on intercity bus. In this case, the levels are the same, where this is level 1, Asylum Street level. Above that would be the kiss and ride taxi stand within the parking. There'd be a small parking facility above here, structured parking. Okay. This access, and I should be talking access too. We should be looking, as we're looking at these drawings, you should also notice the access. So in this case, we're just talking about employer shuttle and some parking, structured parking. There's going to be a structured parking lot above the employer shuttle. So that would be the vehicles coming in and off of Cogswell. The other bus vehicles would be coming off of Spruce Street. In the previous example, concept A, everything comes off of Cogswell. Concept C. Concept C splits just the intercity bus from local bus. Local bus and employer shuttles reside on the west side of the lower track and highway alternative. Station here, employer shuttles, local bus, and then intercity bus remains at Union Station, with a connection across Asylum between the facilities. In this case, the levels are the same, where you would have the taxis above in a parking structure above the bus bays. Okay, so this splits the access somewhat because you do have access coming off of Cogswell for your bus vehicles, local bus and the shuttles, but yet you have your intercity buses coming off of Spruce Street. Now, Concept D is a phased approach, and A, B, and C up to this point can be built independent of when the highway goes in. None of those footprints are within the lowered highway alternative. Concept D, E, and F, which are kind of alternates of E and of D, do require that, that they phase when the highway comes in. So again, that's a 7 to 10 year gap between when the tracks go in and when the highway goes in. So D, what we're recommending is the tracks will go in first, so you need a rail station to accommodate the tracks. So we would construct a rail station in this location, and then we'd only have right now just a small surface lot just to accommodate your rail passengers. So like it could be kiss and ride, drop-offs, maybe some day parking. So those vehicles would be coming in and off of Cogswell. The buses would remain at Union Station during this phase 1. 7 to 10 years later, possibly, then we expand the train station to have it a larger station. And the reason you want to have a larger station at this point is because it won't just be used by just rail passengers, it'll be used by your bus passengers also, because the station is going to accommodate all modes. So at this point, and the colors are kind of hard to see, you have your local buses, you have your shuttle buses, and then you have your intercity buses on level 1. So again, this is Asylum Street level with the parking garage above it. This allows for some splitting of traffic. So you have possibly some entrance off of Cogswell and then exiting off of Spruce Street. So it relieves the pressure on Cogswell to some degree. Concept E is similar to D, calling it phase 1 and phase 2. Now phase 1 has a little trickiness related to constructability, so we don't know quite if this can be done, but we are suggesting that we just build the station all at one time and with some local bus bays behind it to the north of it over a bridge structure. So it's although you're not lowering your highway, we're suggesting that you build a cap or a bridge, a wider bridge, Asylum Street, and then you lower the highway around it. So the structures would be on stilts or some type of construction to allow the highway to be built underneath that station. At this time, for phase 1, there's going to be a surface parking lot in this location, and then your intercity buses would remain at Union Station during phase 1 of Concept E. For phase 2, this is once the highway goes in. We then would introduce these helices, because then that way you would have all your traffic just coming off Spruce Street and relieving the pressure on Cogswell. And then we're suggesting that level 2 of this would have your intercity buses. So the bus bays would be structured differently. Before, the buses were laid out next to each other. This allows the buses to be structured in different levels and potentially could be more efficient in terms of a layout option. Concept F, and we didn't put phase 1. Phase 1 would only be the rail station. Once again, we would wait until the lowered highway option happens. We're just suggesting a different layout. Maybe this would allow some more efficiencies in terms of how the buses are being laid out. It also there's a benefit to the passengers because they don't need to cross different bus bays. You're just going to be crossing one type of bus. So your intercity bus, you don't need to cross many lanes of traffic or buses, but this is just a different option we're showing for Concept F. And again, in this case, the access is both off of Cogswell as well off of Spruce Street, depending on which level of parking.
Excuse me, can you just show us where CT Fast Track would come into this mix? Because I'm getting a little like, how does CT Fast Track afterwards come in?
Right, for right now, CT Fast Track, for all these options except the last one I'm going to show you, they will just operate on street as they do now along Asylum. So the reason that we would have a concourse to catch buses on the south side of Asylum would be because you can catch local buses as well as CT Fast Track. So we're not anticipating CT Fast Track to be pulling into any of these station options. They would just operate how they do currently along the street once they get off the dedicated lane.
Well, where would the dedicated lane come into this picture?
It doesn't. It stops, and maybe Dave or Tim, do you want to explain? At this point, it just stops south of this station area.
Yeah, we're currently evaluating CT Fast Track options and station options at the same time. And we do have various guideway options that we're evaluating now. Some of them would terminate at the, we have a tunnel option that would terminate at that Road A or Bushnell Park West, which would be very, very similar to what's out there today, but it has a high cost, and we're looking at other options in between as well. So we haven't come to a conclusion on CT Fast Track yet, but we are evaluating.
But they would not be considered the same as Connecticut Transit.
No, there would still be CT Fast Track buses, but it's really about where does the guideway end? Does it end exclusively at this street or that street? So we're still evaluating that. Because once you relocate the railroad, now the busway is on the other side of the railroad. So how do you get that across the railroad and then to the highway? So it's either going under the highway or going over it. So there are pluses and minuses for that.
And right now, as I understand it, CT Fast Track operates along Asylum. Some of the routes operate Asylum, so they would continue to operate in that similar fashion to access the new station if it's the station is north. Now, concept G, and I will give kudos to, Bill, if he's in the room at all, but there you are. So at our open planning studio, we did get input from several people, including Bill, and Bill's suggestion of looking south of Asylum in order to make that connection to CT Fast Track. So phase one would occur just the rail station. So you see the purple, and again, these are just representative of building layouts. You know, any of these can kind of be mixed and matched in terms of, you know, what the shape of the building should look like, but this is just our, you know, our thought of how it could fill up the space, maybe with a plaza or whatever. But so phase one would strictly be this train station. Phase two, when the lowered highway occurs and when the cap gets built over the lower highway, is then when we would introduce the buses and when it would make a connection to CT Fast Track. This is the tunnel option for CT Fast Track. So the buses would come up here, and this is a CT Fast Track station. That's a CT Fast Track station. This is Road A, correct? And then it would go out into Bushnell Park West, which is the new roadway. Cars, on the other hand, would be coming in and parking on in a parking, just a surface parking lot. We anticipate that we could put a green roof over this as the second level. So really on this concept, we would not be constructing a parking structure. A parking structure could possibly be accommodated on the north side of Asylum as part of TOD development, but this would be a smaller parking lot, so that could be considered one drawback to the room allocated here, or possibly it would serve just the train station patrons, and you could have your TOD accommodate other users of parking.
Why is that one level? Is that because you can't accommodate more levels there? Or?
Well, what we're suggesting instead, and it could be designed all different ways. In this concept, we're suggesting that there be a green roof and above for level 2. And if you can see, it's kind of hard to see on here, but this is a green roof that we would put over this, And so when you look from Bushnell Park, you would see a green roof, but then the station itself would be a couple stories high. So you would view an iconic looking structure, but then you would, have a green roof. But that's just one idea. So no, you could also accommodate a parking structure on this side if you didn't, right. But that's just a different idea that we had.
Where is Asylum Street? I'm lost my
Oh, okay. This is Asylum Street right here. Yeah, so Union Station is there.
Oh, okay.
And this is the new Bushnell Park West.
Yeah, I see.
And Road A, and then this would be CT Fast Track coming out of the tunnel option and going on to Bushnell Park West. And this is local bus, this is intercity bus. Okay, we could accommodate shuttles. This only has a couple shuttle spaces right here. You could accommodate more, different options. So at this point, I think that was my last slide. Yes, discussion of concepts. And we do have our fine architects with us too. They can answer any questions. Yes.
terrifying.
Okay.
Way too much detail, presented way too fast. Possibly understanding the implications of each one. And I see no serious addressing of what happens to Asylum Street as a street. You're going to be lining it with bus stops and parking garages. I mean, you don't have in your list of objectives at the beginning, you do not include activate Asylum Street. And that's, to me, as a city dweller, that is the single most important thing that needs to happen here. And the second most important thing is that Union Station has to be a workable economic entity and integrated fully into Asylum Street and Asylum Avenue. And, you know, this is an engineer's dream. The citizen's nightmare. And I think you've got to have a lot more public involvement, a lot more meetings, a lot more money. I mean, I'm pretty good usually at this visual stuff and understanding it. You just showed me what, 8?
7.
7 of 10?
Right.
I couldn't, you can't differentiate among them.
Well, you know, D, E, and F are pretty similar for sure. We did say at the earlier, at the earlier checklist that, pedestrian and bike connections are very important, and that TOD and development along Asylum Street is very important. So any of those concepts would incorporate those ideas, which is what you just asked for.
I heard them as objectives.
Yeah.
I didn't see them in any of the designs you showed.
Right. Well, right now, our objective, and maybe I didn't explain this, is really to locate the station. And once we locate the station where we think it should fit on the site, then we will develop it further in terms of a site plan. So that's when we'll really worry about how the sidewalk connections work, how the access works better. Right now, we haven't considered exactly where the access should go off of, whatever street. I mean, we've suggested a driveway location. Our traffic engineers are starting to help us identify where the best access point should be. So that will be enhanced. But the objective right now is to figure out, do you want it as a multimodal station altogether on the west side of the lowered highway alternative? Do you want to split the buses so that you have to walk to Union Station to get on your bus from the rail? But that may make some sense if you don't think there's a strong transfer connection. Plus it's only 4 minutes away, so maybe that's that's a couple blocks. That's no big deal. That would continue to activate Union Station as a transportation center. Does it make more sense to be on the south side of Asylum, like our last alternative showed? Do you think that enhances Asylum Street better because you have your transportation functions on the south side, and on the north side, then the entire Asylum Street and north of that could be all TOD development that's not really related to the train station. So I think that's the general discussion we want to have now, and not necessarily. And then we do meet with our transit technical committee this afternoon and get more input in terms of how these concepts work the best. And we have a physical model, which you're welcome to look at in the back. We have more details on the physical model that we will be showing to our TTC, or we can show you relatively quickly on the different concepts. But that's really the general conversation. I mean, do you want it all to the west of the highway? Do you think we should split it? Well, just a general conversation like that is what we're looking for today, because it is a lot to digest. Anybody? Charles?
Is there any covered or enclosed access plan if you do split the bus and the train station?
Well, we've gotten different opinions on that. So yes, if there's TOD along Asylum, so again, retail, restaurants, you could almost have an indoor mall development where you would have an internal walkway, but then you want to keep your street activated. So I think the conclusion would be that yes, it would be appropriate to have something internal, but in order to keep your street activated, you'd want to make sure that the pedestrian connection works too.
1,000 feet in 4 minutes sounds great today, but January it's not going to.
Right. And we've also heard maybe it could just be an open sidewalk, but with a cover over it too for rain protection. So that's been discussed both internal and external. Right. Thank you. Yes.
Whatever you do, you need to make if you split them up, you need to make the connection. Well, it's a quiet incline going up and down the hill. And if you're thinking about, well, I'm going to come in the train and catch the bus out to stores, so you've got to move you and suitcases along. That could be quite a problem for the more non-hardy or disabled travelers, just being able to get up and down that hill. It's a pretty steep hill.
Mhm.
The other thing, point that I'd like to make is currently near Union Station, you have the city buses, you have the interstate buses, every damn bus in the world cogitating, moving around those very narrow streets.
Mhm.
The only reason there hasn't been a terrible accident is because nobody's going very fast. And they go about 5 miles an hour. You can't pick up much speed there. But every time you add a new bus, a new stop, that's getting worse and worse. You've got, the double buses taking these very narrow corners. It's very intimidating, particularly during rush hour, to just drive up and down there. Sometimes you feel like those buses are gonna run you over. I mean, it's a temporary solution at best, and I think that we need to seriously think when we decide where the buses go. I don't have an opinion at this moment, except that you need to move something. Those streets are too narrow for all the buses that you have circulating around you.
Okay, thank you. Who else? Yes?
I know less than Tony, and I'm totally confused this, but most of the people in this room don't know, but I did have, how many spaces are you leaving aside, setting aside for the kiss and ride?
That's under discussion, under analysis. We don't really have a good handle right now on kiss and ride spots. We've gotten different opinions on that, so
Do you have a range?
20, something like that.
That's not enough. I've been on Spruce Street at rush hour, waiting to get to the light from Asylum Hill. I counted the cars, sometimes there are 30 cars, there are 30, 40, and there are cars on the other side. But I was curious, this is the first I've heard of the employee shuttles, and I'm kind of with Jackie. It already is very congested, and now you're adding a whole other group to the mix. And I was curious, you said a couple times that splitting it would decrease the congestion on Cogswell, so are we building something that we already know is going to cause a lot of congestion on Cogswell? I guess, why wouldn't you try to separate that a little bit? Plus, it's moving it up the hill into the neighborhood a lot more.
Right, well, that is a concern, access and, buses on Cogswell or buses on Asylum or on, sure, it's just anything we need to consider. So we need to get input on what the best access for the station would be. So, thank you.
I have a question in regards to the impact of existing properties on your station design. You're talking about the east and west options of the highway. You indicated in blue building impacts. What would impact existing buildings? I'm not seeing that for the station design, and I would like to see more of that.
We
Such
don't.
as how does the north option versus the south option affect buildings that exist?
We don't have any buildings on our 20-acre site.
There's no.
There's no, for our options, we have a clean site.
That's
Right.
why it's not indicated.
Right, yeah, I'm like thinking, did I miss a building? But no, we don't have any buildings to worry about.
Good.
Yeah.
You answered my question.
There you go, Jackie.
I saw, do you do anything with the triangle?
The Trident, not our station, that's part of the roadway alternatives.
I guess, because I think that makes
Do
a
you-
huge impact as far as where that station is placed, about how you're going to direct the
Do you wanna
traffic
go
in
to
there.
the-
And then my
Which
only
one?
last
Sure.
question, if you can address that too,
Sure.
I'm assuming you guys are having some sort of projections as far as we build a new train station and we get more trains in there.
Correct.
What if is it a 10, 20, 30% increase in individual cars that your transportation engineers are projecting? What is the projected increase in 2018 versus 2028? And because I'm just looking at, what are we talking about?
Is Nick in the room, or?
Oh,
Nick?
what-
Oh, go ahead.
I'd like to try to
Traffic
answer that.
projections, go ahead.
That's a really good question, and actually, we just scheduled a meeting internally to discuss that very point. Once we have the station, how much traffic is it drawing? We know how many riders overall the state will have with the rail projections as they are today, but what does that mean for the station? How many people are coming off the ramp to go to the station? How many people are coming from West Hartford? That's something that we're trying to put together right now with our transportation demand model, so we know if there are any impacts to local roads. Right now, we think that there won't be, but we're gonna really get into that. that.
Does the city and state already have projections for 2018 when new rail comes in and the increased rail service comes in and what that will increase? There's gotta be some sort of
Right.
percentage.
For overall ridership, yes.
So do we know what that is?
Do we have station, Dave
Is
or
it like
Pat?
10% more, 20% more traffic?
I think it's just overall is what they've estimated, not individual stations. Did I say that right? Yeah.
Really quick. The state has done projections for the future rail service. They originally did it out to about 2040. Okay, they look about 25, 30 years in advance. They do have those numbers. They are right now breaking it out per station by station to try to distribute that. Just to give you an example, you know, probably 4 or 5 years ago, we predicted an additional 325 cars space parked at the station. And that's based on a percentage of future ridership. Okay, so a lot of that has been done. We're refining that as we go. The DOT just redid that entire projection. We're just waiting to get that final distribution right now from them by station by station. So there's a lot of data there, and we are utilizing the best data we have.
I mean, I guess from my point of view, I mean, I understand that these are just conceptual plans that we're looking at right now about where and how, what we group together. Asylum Hill and downtown is already disconnected as far as if you walk that. Because of the rail, because of the intersection, the Trident intersection there, there's just, it's a barrier. And so, I guess, I agree with Tony, and Jackie, how do we try and look at that as creating it to be more walkable? And I understand that's on that, but not addressing the Trident, looking at some of this, and really I sit there and I go, I don't know how, with the increased traffic that I'm looking at, with the ridership there, how are you ever going to create a pedestrian-friendly area around that beyond?
And we agree, it is a concern. And we've been looking at, one of the things that we've done is we've looked at the Trident itself. We've heard from many people, we've seen many options from various parties to try to address the Trident. So we did a little analysis on where the cars are coming from, where are they going to. So you have Asylum, and then Farmington in the split, then you have Cogswell going to Broad Street in the middle. And what we looked at is the majority of the traffic is going east-west. So we've seen some of these concepts where combined Farmington and Asylum in one road, intersections explode because there's a lot of traffic there. Today, that link between Cogswell and Broad is really needed because you have that eastbound on-ramp on Broad Street. So you need access for that. For our proposed alternatives, there's no ramps on Broad Street. So you might not need that connection. So what we did is remove that connection between Cogswell and Broad, and you can see it right here on this graphic, and I'll point to this one on the side. Here is Cogswell Street, here's the Trident, here's Broad Street, and this is that missing piece right there. So we felt that if we took that roadway piece out of the middle, the intersections will work much more efficiently, and then also we can reduce the size of the intersections as well. Because we think in working with the city, this is going to be a really important gateway to downtown, so we didn't want to have massive intersections here. So by removing that link, it reduces the size of the intersections, and also it operates much more efficiently. So this is one of the ideas we have for the Trident.
How do you drive from north to south?
Where is your closest north-south entrances on either side of that?
There's a couple of places for that. And when we looked at the traffic, 80% of the traffic was going east-west. It was only that 20% that would be have to find another route, and there's two ways you can do that. And great, because this doesn't show either one of them. So you'll have to, David, you're gonna have to trust me.
There'll be other meetings you can show me that.
And if you don't, I'll find another slide. Hold on.
Well, I have.
Here we go. So this is showing one of the eastern alternatives. So there's two ways. It depends on where you're coming from, number one. But from Capitol, instead of taking Broad, you can take that new road right here, which is not there today. So it's new access to take a left and then take a right. And also Asylum Place right here, which is right next to the Trident. So this is a very, it's a little bit out of the way. And and to make the Trident work, what we found is If you want to accommodate every single movement, there's going to be that link there, there's going to be bigger intersections, there's going to be more congestion. So if you take that one conflict out and you take those cars, it'll be a little bit of an inconvenience, there's no question about that. But I think overall it might operate a little bit better.
So do it from my house.
So,
When I get there. You already took out Flower Street, remember?
oh, can't start with that.
This north-south, those are the people that live in the city that want to go north-south,
Right.
not just the people that want to go in and out of town.
Right. So for you, coming up here, we can come down and do this to the city, or also come down here and go to the city this way. And if you want to get to Capitol, so then this is the way right here, or through Sigourney. So this way to Sigourney, or over here to Asylum Place. So, I mean, this is not a done deal. This is something that we found that works for the Trident. There's more evaluation to be done. Again, not final, but this is something that we felt worked the best out of all of the options that we've seen.
So this isn't really a question as much as it's just a concern. So when it comes to autonomous vehicles and like the future of mobility, you know, all of our research indicates that there's kind of a sea change that's happening, that there's going to be more and more, you know, ride sharing and ride networks that people are going to belong to rather than car ownership, that kind of thing. And, you know, just the way people get around within the city is going to be different. There's going to be less of a need for parking and more of a need for just the mobility aspect of things. So I just want to really encourage you to kind of consider that. Last time I raised it, I think you kind of hadn't really gotten there yet, but it is changing, and especially around urban centers. And so I think that it's just something in terms of the design that needs to be taken into consideration.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Like within the next 10 years, it's going to happen.
Yeah. I think what would make everything better, there's no question about that. We're designing for what we know now, and when it changes, we can definitely accommodate that. Aaron?
I'll just say, in regards to the specific concepts for the location of the new transit center, based on what's been presented at this point today, I would advocate more for concept D, phase 2. It seems to be the best use of space in the urban core that would otherwise be wasted. I know throughout this process, the area south of Asylum has been sold to us as residents of the city as being the most developable land that's going to result from this project. So the thought of putting the bus station there, to me, I think contradicts a lot of what we're going for as far as redeveloping the urban core. I would hope that when looking at traffic in the intersection, that we're looking at all forms of traffic, pedestrians and bikes.
Right.
We're talking about traffic counts, not just vehicles, but all forms of traffic. And when it comes to cars, you know, the more livable that we make these neighborhoods, the less cars that we have in the streets. No offense to most in the room, but there are very few millennials represented in this room that aren't working for the DOT. And unfortunately, that's comical to some extent, but at the same time it's not, because there is a drastically changing concept and mindset of the generation that's coming up behind. Frankly, most of the people that are making the decisions for this infrastructure. And I think that we, today and all the previous meetings, have focused so much on traffic, whether it's parking or getting cars in and out, that we're forgetting, to Amy's point, the shift here that we're seeing in our population. And the faster that our infrastructure can catch up with the changing mindsets of our population, the faster that can happen. So again, I know I'm being a dead horse here, but I really encourage us to consider the livability of this city and this neighborhood as we go through all of this design concepts. And it's disheartening to continue to hear such a discussion on traffic. And I'm reminded constantly, this is a highway project. But let's keep in mind this is a highway project through what can be a very livable neighborhood, and what was a very livable neighborhood before this highway destroyed it.
Hi, I agree with some of the things he said, but I need more information, much like Tony said. I'd like to review a little bit more of the south options, because in all the options you showed, there's varying different degrees of transit-oriented development that could happen in the future. I'm not yet comfortable with where exactly that south option would be located. It would be located east of what's currently fast track and the exit ramp, closer to Bushnell Park, or closer to Broad Street. I need more orientation.
Okay. G, no, Asylum Street is, if I can, right there. Asylum is there. The lowered highway will be here. This is Broad, and that's Cogswell up there. And so this is built on a cap, and this is Bushnell Park West, the new street. So it is west of the lowered highway option. Well, the station is obviously west, and then the cap, the bus facilities would be on top of a cap.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're talking about the highway option in the future. I'm talking about where the highway and fast track exits onto Asylum now. This would be west of it?
Yes.
Yes.
West.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Trying to gather my
Sorry, yeah.
orientation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I've got it. Thank you.
Okay. Tony?
I think what you need to do is to remember that the transit riders, the train riders, all forms of transit people are the customers for whatever retail goes in there. And so it seems to me that impact on economic activity and retail should be a much higher priority concept in your planning for the transit. In other words, every single one of these concepts, you could probably throw out half of them just on this basis, should be evaluated early on whether it's going to support economic activity and whether that economic activity is going to be. And I know, I went through this with the goals and objectives thing, and I know that can't be with the Princeton among the, whatever the top level is called, the
Primary purpose.
That'll be part of the objectives instead. Well, this is just a vote to change that, because we are at the point in this project, the location of this project, where all transportation totally merges with all the economic issues. And it just seems to me that you've got to elevate that, the impact of the transit alternative we're considering on the economic activity that's going to occur.
Which is a good segue into the evaluation criteria that will be leading our TTC members through this afternoon. And supporting economic development is one of the evaluation criteria that they will be looking at in terms of the concepts that they're reviewing. So the others are identity and visibility. So we've been asked to locate and plan a train station that would be an iconic structure. So of any of the concepts, which of those does it the best? The operational efficiency is also really important, and that's something they'll be evaluating, and that is particularly related to access between modes and how efficient that is, as well as the efficiency within the building itself. Site fit, that not only how it respects the topography of the site, as you know, the elevations, and you can tell from the Model 2, the elevation going up Asylum is critical to identify as you're planning a train station, and how does access work to the site, within the site. Support economic development, which we discussed, and then safety and security. And those are the criterias that we will be looking at, especially with the federal agencies who have guidelines on what you can build over highway structures, if that's, or over a highway, if that's the type of concept that we want to move forward with. So.
And Gina, we should add environmental impacts, cultural impacts.
And that's all part of Christine's, right, yes, exactly. Christine's worrying about that as part of the EIS, and that is true. This will all fit into the EIS document.
Shifting back to the train station, and although I worry about what will happen to the present Union Station if it's abandoned, which I think we're all worried about that, I think overwhelmingly to me, the disadvantage of disconnecting bus and train from both mobility and weather and all the things that have been mentioned just practically force us to keep the trains and the buses together at the same spot, which would be close to the train station, into the train track, it seems to me. I can't imagine, I walked that hill in a bad snowstorm in order to get to St. Francis last winter. It's really hard in the summer for people who are disabled or elderly or lazy. And I just can't imagine it in the winter, which is essentially a 5 or 6 month period of time in the year. So I hate to say it, but I think we should abandon the rail station as part of the transit system. But I don't know how to keep it connected, but I agree with you that somehow or other it needs to have a purpose.
You need to have a viable Union Station.
Somehow or other it's got to have a purpose with relationship.
That only happens on the street. I mean, the supporting economic development is a very large, big goal. It could include making life happy for real estate developers who are building buildings. It doesn't say anything about urban design on the street and the retail activity. That's a subset of economic development, which is going to be the key, I think, to making the street friendly for walking on and making the connections to real station.
And as you're aware, Goody Clancy is on our team also, and they're in charge of the urban design aspect. So as the stations get more and more developed, we will be showing images where those urban design principles are shown. And the city has also hired a master planner for this area too, and they really are the ones focusing on the TOD development, and they will be giving us their input in terms of which concept enhances that the best and how it should be laid out to enhance that the best. So, we're worried about the transit operations piece, hand in hand with economic development, but they're going to be worried more focused on the economic development piece. So.
Are we going to hear from Goody Clancy today?
No, no, our position is, and they're not at the meeting today either, no, thank you. Any other quick comments, and then we should move on to the other?
I'll do 2 last ones, and
okay.
One I'll stay in the capacity with right now. Fast track connection, everything we can do to put more people on fast track, I think makes it easier for my troopers on the highway to deal with less traffic out there. Is the limitation on not having the fast track buses go into a new station, except for that one example, just due to the unknown of where they'd be coming onto the roadway? Is it a matter of just trying to keep the bus stations where they are, or is it a space limitation with the size of the fast track buses in there? I say that because I think it's important, if that's a transit spot, those fast track buses should be going right into that area to encourage more people to use that instead of going around.
Okay.
So if that's at all possible to keep in there.
We can look into that.
Now, outside of the uniform position I'm here for now, and more in my, what's the overriding image of what the transit station's supposed to be? Is it going to be, is it viewed as a hub where all sorts of people are driving in and coming in to take the train and the buses to go places? Is it seen as long-term where people are just going to get dropped off and going? Is it going to be seen as an entry point into the city?
All of the above.
Or, which direction are we going in that? Because we start going in those directions, if it's mostly as an entry point because we're looking at trying to get commuters in there.
But it's also an exit point. It's a regional rail. The new trains are considered regional rail. Those are the new, what sometimes they're referred to as commuter rail, but we're referring them to regional rail, meaning they're going in all different directions. So we're anticipating that there are going to be riders in using Hartford as the origin as well as the destination.
Well, I'll say, as a resident of Glastonbury, if I were, when the rail system starts going, I'm looking forward to be able to jump on a train somewhere in central Connecticut and go to New York City for the day. I think that's great, and that's where we should be moving. But I don't see myself driving specifically into Hartford to get the train, just because I know it's going to be more difficult to get in there. If I'm going to be driving and parking my car somewhere, I'm probably going to go up to Windsor or down to Berlin or something. If I'm going to the Hartford train station, I'm probably just going to get dropped off because it's easier for my family to drop me off there. So I think that's something to be considered as we're deciding how much surface parking and the amount of traffic that's going to be coming in. I don't think you're going to get the people who are going to park at a train station and go to the city for the day necessarily having to go to Hartford to do that.
Right. Thank you. And those discussions have been, had also with the different stations along the Amtrak line. So that's all good discussion points. Anybody else before we move on? Okay, who's after me? So our next steps, just really quickly, we're evaluating these By September, we're supposed to select a preferred concept. We'll have an additional transit operations discussion, and the end of the year have a 15% design, again, concentrating on the layout rather than the actual look of the building.
Your destination is on the left.
So,
Public meetings in the process?
Marcy will address that, I believe, or Rich. Go ahead, Rich.
So I just want to pick up a little bit because those were great comments, serious concerns, the same concerns that the team has. So I just want to reinforce that we have not walked away from what is a really important goal of the project, and that is to restitch Asylum Hill to downtown. We recognize that this whole station planning effort is really critical to the success of this overall highway project. We've mentioned for many years, you all know it, we know it, the public recognizes it now, that this is a great opportunity to restitch the neighborhoods, to improve transportation, safety and mobility, and opportunities for transit-oriented development where it could really create some excitement to this part of the city. And the team, while Gina has focused on the basic layouts of where will bus operations be, where will rail station operations be, where might parking, those are just kind of high level with regards to the overall site of the station. But we're very mindful of the street environment. All those visuals that we showed you, you can see them on our model. It's all part of the mix. We have the full team engaged, and we also have the city's newer consultants, HOK and WSP. So we're all working together, multimodal, multidisciplinary perspective on this. So thanks for all your good comments, and they're very important to hear. A comment or a question about public involvement. We are moving very quickly. We kind of need to be aggressive to meet our schedule. I'd be interested to know if this group would, typically we don't have public forums in the summer months, but given the schedule, is there interest in meeting again in, would it be August? It might be a good time, early August. If you're interested, we can have that. We don't usually have our public meetings in the summer months, and maybe perhaps what's more important, if we get it right with you folks, we've also gotten it right with the greater public. So why don't the team will talk about maybe an August Public Advisory Committee meeting? Okay. All right. So if that isn't challenging enough, we have this interchange study. It'll be a 2-minute update. Just conceptually, these are the various, oh, yeah, sure.
Future meeting in August would include what you all would, at that point, know as your preferred alternative?
I don't think we will have identified it. I think we'll have narrowed probably what we're focusing on. Maybe it'll be 1 or 2 concepts, but I think what it needs to be is maybe devoted just to the station. And we'll figure out, we'll have to talk with the team to figure out how do we have a working session rather than a presentation and Q&A.
Obviously, I'm interested in having a meeting of the public before you submit your preferred alternative.
Yeah, I think we were planning probably a public forum in the fall. It would cover both the viaduct, the station, and the interchange study as well. So why don't we talk about how we formulate that, and we'll probably send out an email to the group what our plan is. So the interchange study, this just graphically depicts the general alternatives that we're studying. It's underway. You've seen this before. Don't get too fixated on the exact alignments or locations, but fundamentally we're looking at a northerly realignment of a portion of I84. We're looking at what we can do on the existing I84 over the Buckley Bridge in that vicinity. A southerly realignment showed by the dashed line indicating a tunnel, and then either tunneling 91 as shown graphically here, or capping scenario. And I think we made that presentation at the last advisory committee meeting. So this work is underway. We're working on documenting our needs and deficiencies for this project area. We've had a number of stakeholder meetings over the past few months. We've met with Upper Albany, Main Street, Clay Arsenal, Riverfront Recapture, Coatesville National Historic Park, Town of East Hartford, etc. Just getting some feedback or introducing the study and the concepts and getting some feedback. Nothing dramatic at this point. There is various levels of interest. Of course, there's big questions about the viability of being able to afford these very bold proposals, but it's just a way to introduce the project to a number of stakeholders. Our next steps this summer will wrap up formally our needs and deficiencies analysis. We're going to formulate a purpose and needs statement. In the fall, we'll have some preliminary results. We'll have some general concepts, certainly more detailed than what you've seen here. We do plan to have some public meetings, so it would be an opportunity to continue the conversation with the public on the station and other aspects of the viaduct project. And then in 2018, we'll do our final analysis, our final reporting, what our suggested path forward might be in a final report. Any questions on the interchange study before I turn it over to Christine? Yes, Jackie. Yeah.
The funding for the I-91 and I-84 is separate though?
Yes. Yeah. We have a limited amount of money for the interchange study. That's all we have right now is money for a study. Right. And they're separate. Yeah, Joe.
The interchange option where it could potentially be moved north and, was it north and west, or just northerly, as you said?
Yep.
That would address the concerns, because about 3 through lanes on 84 going down to 2, because that interchange would be moved up prior to that congestion, right?
Yes, that's right. We would bypass that bottleneck, which is the existing interchange. We would create a new interchange in that northerly alignment with 91 to the north in the North Meadows area. Yeah, we bypass the bottleneck.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is a key to accomplishing our goal. Anything else on the interchange study? We're good? Okay, thank you. Christine?
Okay, so as you are aware, the foundation of the DEIS is really based on a series of technical reports, because these technical reports take a deeper dive into determination of what the impacts are and what potential mitigation is. We have developed an impact and methodology report, which is a comprehensive report on all the qualitative and quantitative methodologies that we have to adhere to for all the various NEPA and SEPA disciplines: air quality, noise, vibration, cultural resources, so on and so forth. That impact methodology report has been vetted through FHWA as well as DOT, as well as several times with our participating and cooperating agencies. So we are in the process of finalizing that impact methodology report currently. So we are advancing our cultural resources tech report, our noise and vibration tech report, our air quality, and we're starting to ramp up our land use and socioeconomic technical report. In terms of the cultural resources tech report, we're in about revision 3 now. SHPO has looked at it as well as DOT and commented on it. We are developing a response to those comments and our revised version of that report. Once we get there, we will start our official Section 106 consultation with the 106 consulting parties. And that's pretty much the forum where we talk about effects to historic resources and what the mitigation might be. And Bob, you're concerned about Union Station. What's going to happen to Union Station when we take away some of the activity is something that SHPO is very concerned about. And as part of that 106 consulting process, we'll be getting into ideas and ways that we can mitigate that kind of adverse impact that could happen if activity goes away from that station and it goes into disrepair. So there's going to be a lot of 106 coordination happening on these various resources. Noise and vibration, we are in the process of doing the modeling now. I don't have any results to share with you, but it is basically a very detailed report that's going to be looking at the impacts, noise impacts on various sensitive receptors throughout the study area. And it's got significant evaluation on potential noise abatement measures like noise walls and whether or not they're warranted, number one, and if they are warranted, whether or not they're cost effective and feasible. In terms of air quality, preliminarily, it's looking like the proposed alternatives will not have any exceedances of the National Ambient Air Quality Standards, which is a positive thing. Again, that is being developed right now, is being in its final review, and DOT will be looking at noise and vibration and air quality technical reports shortly. Land use and socioeconomic impact technical report is a little slugging behind a little bit, and like I said, we're just ramping that up. So in terms, in terms of the timeline for all this, again, we're currently ongoing with our technical analysis in a series of technical reports. The draft environmental impact statement will be out for review, anticipated in early 2019. The public hearing will be in the spring of 2019, followed by a comprehensive public comment period, which you will take any comments and address those comments. And the final EIS currently is scheduled for late 2019. So about 2.5 years from now. So that's the current timeline, but right now, like I said, we're really kind of full throttle with these technical reports that will feed up into the draft EIS. Yes, Tony.
Christine, all of these concerns that you heard about the street life and the retail activities, what happens in the station and so forth, do those get looked at under your, what do you call it,
Land use and socioeconomic technical report, correct. That's going to look at land use impacts, displacements of family and relocation plans. It's going to look at cumulative and secondary indirect impacts. It's going to look at visual and aesthetic impacts, which is why that technical report's a little, it's just getting started because we don't have the input that we necessarily need to really delve into that at this point. We have some of it. We have property impacts and everything. EJ communities, how we impact environmental justice communities is a subject of land use and socioeconomic TES as well. And the economic benefits of time travel savings on the overall economic and potential redevelopment opportunities and how they will be a benefit or not to the city. So that's all evaluated in the land use and socioeconomic TES. And we actually have a sub-consultant on board called FXM who pretty much does nothing but that. There's a series of models that are used, and it's I can't talk into detail about a lot of it, but that's going to be a technical report that's going to warrant a lot of strategy and approach. EPA is very, very interested in how we're going to do that analysis, so that's going to be the subject of a lot of meetings coming up. Yes?
Does the land use and impact study, does that go as far back as the 60s and looking at the land use before the highway cut through the neighborhoods?
It will allude to that, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it will, shall I say, acknowledge the detriment that the highway did and how we want to repair that to the extent that we can.
Can you do technical analysis of the impacts of various plans on street life and livability? Is there such a thing? I mean, we're looking futuristically, not so much of what you're taking away, but what different alternatives could give.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if the EIS will get into detail in that, Tony. Certainly will identify appropriate streetscaping, whatever the DOT is typically context-sensitive design, but in terms of the level of detail, I don't think you're going to find that in the DEIS.
It's just that overall, I mean, there's got to be a way to elevate these concerns that you heard here about street and connectivity and all that stuff in this overall project.
Right, and like I said, it will be addressed. I mean, part of the timing of the DEIS, it's been delayed a little bit, is because there's a lot of input that we need to get on the transit center that's got to feed into the DEIS so we can evaluate what those impacts are and how we can best design it. Jackie?
When you're talking about air quality,
yeah.
Are we assuming that the current air quality is within parameters?
For the most part, the monitoring that we've looked at that the state has done over the past couple of years, the existing levels are under the standards. Yeah, except for ozone. Ozone's a little bit iffy in terms of that. But for the most part, I was surprised when I looked at the monitoring results because they were a lot lower than the standards. And in terms of the intersections that we evaluated, basically because of the proposed improvements, we're doing a better job in terms of improving level of service, reducing the congestion through some of those intersections, which is why we're not showing exceedances over the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. And that's a barometer that FHWA uses to determine whether or not there's significant impacts.
So So all the black dust that's in my house, that's within standards? I mean, it's really weird. It comes from the windows. I mean, you don't have to jump in the windows.
I mean, that could be a result of construction, Jackie. I don't know the situation, but you know, the state does annual monitoring, and the results are, I was surprised, to be quite frank. So. Anybody else have any questions? Okay. Dave is dying to talk about stated preference survey.
I was going to say, my ears are like blown away. I'm going to stand back a little bit, so hopefully save your ears a little bit. Now if I can get going in the right direction, there we go. Okay, as you probably know, a lot of you, we did a stated preference survey. This is really a driver. I wish it was bike and ped. Maybe the next one will be bike and ped, Aaron, so we'll get that one as the next one. But this is really targeted to drivers that currently use the I84 corridor right now, that go down, or, you know, either originate, end up, or go through this area. We really want to understand what their reaction might be during different scenarios of construction. So that's really why we have done this. Over the next couple years, we're really going to start concentrating on how to build this. And we talked a lot about some of the options before, conventional options that might take, you know, 7 to 10 years, maybe some more accelerated methods that actually might, as Rich alluded to, pull that Band-Aid off quick. A little more pain, but there actually could be a lot reduced time frame. So we really want to see what the reaction was. We take this survey and what we need to do, and one of the big things is get them in transit. You mentioned Connecticut Fast Track, the new rail service. We want to get as many people out of their cars, onto transit or other means as possible, and what it will take to do that. So that's really what this survey was about. Some of the things, how many in here took it? I think there's probably, did a lot of people take it or not? Aaron? Okay. So you kind of saw the questions. They were really geared towards, a lot of it congestion. Okay, what will some congestion do to you to change your patterns? Will you switch your time or peak period? Use alternate routes? Try to change a destination. Maybe you don't have to, your destination will take you out of this area. Big thing, it was the mode to transit. We really want to see what it would take to get people into transit or reduce trips. So those are really the questions we kind of asked. So what are we going to do with it? So we got a lot of data, and what this will do is it'll help feed into our travel demand model, which is a huge model that we have of all the traffic in the area, and also it also handles transit use and everything like that, that we can actually look at some of the factors, and based on the congestion and what we actually do to the roadway, we can predict how many people, or try to predict how many people will switch to transit. So the whole thing is this really goes back to this model. We did a lot of different methods to collect the data. We had direct email distribution, almost 500 people. We did a lot of in-person intercepts. I believe they were in a lot of the libraries along the corridor, got almost 500 there. And a lot of it was through direct connections, either through our website or through some of the businesses in the area. And I get to give Mike Aetna credit. I think a good portion of this was Aetna. They did a great job. And those are a lot of the perfect people we wanted. You're right in the middle of the corridor, and a lot of them drive every day to work and back. So that was a really good selection of people we captured. So what we found is the trip purpose. A lot of it, again, 60% was to and from work. Perfect. Again, during this analysis, we're really mostly concerned about the congested periods in the AM and the PM. So that's a really good capture. There's 40% of a lot of other different things. I mean, I took it from our Meriden office to here for a business meeting, and that would be work-related businesses quite a bit. And as you can see, there's a lot of other categories there that we did capture. So what did we find? You know, what did people say? What will make them change into, you know, their drive-in mode into transit? What we found is about 28 or 30% basically said, no, nothing will get them to change. I guess those are the older people, maybe, I don't know. They won't get out of their car, or maybe they can't. They really only have that as a means. But 72% were positive that they would consider some form of transit. Certainly the severe traffic delays is one thing.
And what can we do with the transit service? Decrease cost. We had a lot of factors in the survey of even going from free during critical periods or reduced fees, increased frequency, more convenient. We talked about parking a little bit, and really it's not only in Hartford, but also we've heard a lot at the fast track stations there is limited parking, so we've got to make sure that even on the outlying areas there's a lot of good parking. So we did hear a lot of good positive feedback on that. The next thing is we tried to judge would they have a preference between what I call standard method of construction, which is pretty much maintaining all the existing lanes and capacities during peak hour rush times, pretty much stick building, you know, traditionally how we build things, or would they have a preference for accelerated? This actually is a picture on the right there of the when they shut down the i84 highway in Southernton over the weekend and replaced some bridges. So we tried to get some results on that. Really wasn't very strong either way. We had 40% that liked the conventional method, 44% accelerated, 16% neither. I think we'll probably, as we get the options further developed and how we can do this, we'll probably look at this again and try to refigure that. I think a lot of people don't really understand. There was an explanation in the survey what the difference is, but it's probably hard to really relate that. Okay, any questions on the state of preference survey? And we're going to have Marcy just finish it up with the outreach.
Just a comment.
Sure.
Wouldn't it save a lot if instead of starting up a new employee shuttle, you gave them a bus pass since it is an intermodal transportation center?
Yeah, you know, basically, you know, some of the employers, I think Aetna is a great one, really do encourage their employees to use transit. Some don't, but I think we've heard from the city that they would like, and what we're doing is we're actually doing a survey right now to some of the bigger businesses to see if they would be interested in doing shuttles. So we're not sure if that's something they would want or not. So we actually are going to be polling them probably within the next month or two.
Well, I had a question, would they give out a bus pass that might?
I agree. Yeah.
The question is on it in terms of transit benefits, would you give your employees transit benefits? Is that the survey?
Oh, there you go. So we do have something like that. Yep. Great. Thanks, Gene. Hey.
All right. Question about the accelerated. That picture and example, that was from a different project where they did the lane shift, right? So you were going, they converted Tuesday southbound to northbound, right? So
Yeah. Well, this one, the one I showed in Southernton, they actually shut the highway down for the weekend, i84. So they had all the traffic get off the ramps and get back on. I think it was like a diamond interchange. It was very easy to do. And then they actually demolished the existing spans and rolled in new superstructures and dropped them in. So Monday morning, people were back driving the normal way they do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
there is different ways to do it. A lot of different things throughout the state.
Okay. And I think some of those have worked well.
They
but
have.
I just don't think we can even have an option where accelerated is, let's just shut it down for a year. You can't.
I don't think any of us think that. So
I keep hearing that sort of reassurance, but then it seems to pop back up every once in a while. And going back to, this is a highway project and freight moves on highways. This would be such a drag on commerce that a day, okay, that's or a weekend, okay, but you can't do, you know.
Yeah, we're going to look at that. We definitely realize, I mean, this has got 180,000 vehicles on it a day. It's the heaviest congestion in the entire state, vastly, right in the middle of our job. So, yeah, sure.
So I do think you're missing bicyclists and pedestrians here, and the opportunity to have secure bicycle storage, for instance,
right.
with corporations. There's a variety of things that can be done. And you should have a few questions.
Yeah. Yeah, so basically this one was just geared to people in cars driving.
Yeah, yeah. No, I got that.
But yeah, so yeah, we are talking a lot about bike and ped. I mean, that is, I think Nick's here, but we've included all the bike ped movements and everything in our analysis. As we start laying out the entire system, you're going to see a lot of bike lanes. We have the entire corridor pretty much plotted out from one end to the other of what we're doing with bike amenities. And there's quite a lot going on. I think once we get into the station work, We're going to look at those things. There is some bike lockers now at Union Station, but there needs to be a lot more.
Yeah.
So it's very important on this job. I know we do, it sounds like we're traffic, but bike and ped is very important too.
Well,
Yeah.
those secure connections are critical.
That's right. That's right. David?
Maybe not as important, but a worthy question. Did your survey include coming in out of Hartford for medical vehicles, such as the hospitals?
Yeah, there was some, under that list there. Yeah, under the list there was people can take it if they just made a trip within the area of the corridor. So I took it. I say get in once a week or once every 2 weeks, and so yeah, definitely it captured a lot of different uses. Yeah, yeah. Sure.
To Bruce's point, is there a plan to collect data on, with respect to the preferences of cyclists and walkers?
We've done a lot. I mean, we've done a complete bike, pedestrian, walks. In fact, all our traffic counts were all video counts, which did capture all the bike and ped movements. We also use CROGS data. Every year you guys update that, right, Jennifer? You do a lot of count information. So we're very on top of that. So that's ongoing almost, as far as who's using it, but also how they want to use it under our new designed options. We got the complete East Coast Greenway that we're pretty much picking up right from the west end of our project all the way to the east as a dedicated linear park bikeway. So it's been a pretty big role in our entire design. Yeah. Anybody else? Aaron?
Given that we know that severe traffic delays are the biggest factor that will drive people out of their cars and into public transport, does it seem counterintuitive that the primary focus of this project is to decrease the traffic delays?
To decrease traffic
Delays.
Delays, yeah. I mean, but the thing is, I think it's going to take us everything we can do just to keep it under control, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm looking at this job as, even during construction, I hope we force a lot of people in transit and they don't go back to driving. I really do hope that. Even with the new rail service started next year, I'm real anxious to see I hope that starts attracting a lot of people. Because I think people are going to find that it's great service. Nick, do you want to comment on that too?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Optimizing traffic flow isn't the main goal of the project. If it were, we'd basically be widening every road in Hartford to fit extra cars through.
Yeah.
Our main concern is keeping it from backing up onto the freeway. That's the biggest thing because that leads to a higher accident rate. In fact, we're not designing the local roads to flow perfectly at all times of day, and we expect during peak hours there will be delays. We want to make it steadier flow so cars can get more green lights but at a slower speed. That will decrease the perception of delay, but at the same time, the slower speeds and more consistent speeds will both save gas and make safer roads for pedestrian and cyclists. So it's not the main concern of the project. The main concern is technically the bridges. And then stitching Hartford together, improving all multimodal connectivity, building the new train station, and stopping traffic from backing up onto the freeway. Those are sort of knock-on effects. They're byproducts of it.
Yeah, we actually, in our model, when we did at the beginning of the job, we have almost a zero growth rate. It's a very flat growth rate, which probably isn't reality, but we realize this, we can't build our way out of this. This is not a capacity project. Safety is huge. We have 2 accidents a day in this little area, and some of them are very severe, especially without the shoulders on the highway and even the local roads. So this is really a safety project and a lot of other things, but it's really not to make cars get through here faster. Yep.
I know that Springfield up at I-91 has decided to keep the viaduct and is working on the project, but have you looked at their traffic patterns and what they've done with alternate routes during construction?
Yeah, actually Trans-Systems worked on some of that, and we actually worked on a study to get rid of that viaduct.
Yeah.
You don't hear too much about that, but that has been done, I think, over the last 2 or 3 years by our Boston office. But they actually, especially with the casino going in there and everything, so they have looked at what can we do to get rid of part of that viaduct or, again, reopen the city to the river. They're going through a similar process. The problem they had is their structures are so bad they were beyond a certain point, so they decided they had to replace all the decks and a lot of the superstructures. So they're doing the same thing we're doing. Believe it or not, actually working on that job a little bit. And
looking at the alternative
yes,
traffic patterns that they have,
we,
different
yeah,
options as well.
absolutely. And we'll be looking at a lot of what they've done, you know, and other things. I think Rich has shared some slides of zip barrier type things with us, just the other day. So there's a lot of options that we're going to be studying. Really, the next couple of years that's our big thing, is to really look at the construction stage and how we're going to build it. Yeah. Anybody else? Hey, Sandy.
Dave, I know that in your driver preference survey, you give people the option to say I would walk or I would bike rather than using the highway. But I think we all know that those are options that travelers may choose, particularly if you're near in a corridor. So will you give that consideration when you're developing construction sequencing and thinking about how you deal with the traffic that's diverted from the highway?
Right.
I mean, we have a good sidewalk system, so anybody walking to work would find the facilities they need. But if we're putting a lot of traffic onto local streets because it can't be handled on the highway, we then sort of push back on the ability of people to bike to work who might be interested. So I hope that you can look at the full spectrum of the roadway network in terms of the options that people would want to use.
Right, we will. This stated survey was directed towards drivers. You're absolutely right.
Yeah, but drivers are also cyclists and walkers. That's where my concern is, that you didn't give anybody the option to indicate to you that would be something they would consider using. Right,
but these are, when we looked at the origin and destination of most of the people that took this, they were pretty far travelers. So probably biking and walking is not necessarily an option for most of the people that took the survey. Now, to answer your question though, yeah, during construction, we're going to definitely look at whatever improvements we can make off the highway. We're looking at what can we build as far as the rail line, the station. What streets can we improve? We're going to have to do a lot of that. Signal systems. So it's going to be mostly everything offline, from actually going in and touching i84 first. That'll be our first priority. I mean, we've even talked about, what about the elevated greenways, or any way we can get that built early on. So we do realize that any of these connections to get people off the highway, or even preventing all the people that literally get on the highway for an exit or two and get off. I was shocked at how many people do that. It's like 15% during peak hour. That's amazing. So we don't want them to do that. So we're going to try to build a lot of these secondary roads and do everything we can to improve the systems, not just for cars, transit, bikes, walks, everybody. Okay? Yeah. Any, David?
One more.
Yeah.
As you get closer to your preferred alternative, I at least would really like to see a segment of our public advisory committee meeting dedicated towards that stitching together that Dave mentioned.
Right.
How this proposal, whatever it will end up being, will connect the scar of the highway going through our city and how it connects north and south.
Right.
I realize most of the traffic on our roads is from Western employees. As a city dweller, we want to know how what you stated originally when this project started, the interconnectivity, again, the stitching together, as Nick said, how is that happening? Not just exit by exit, section by section, for the overall project.
Correct.
I think that's important for us to do.
Yep. Not just between a Silent Hill and downtown.
Correct.
Through Park
Whole
Hill,
project.
Frog Hollow, and Silent Hill.
Yeah, let me just, a great way to visualize, because we have shown graphics depicting the latest iteration of the lowered highway, the widened overpasses, the landscaping, the berming, potential noise walls, and you can really visualize it much better on the 3D model. So you can look, say for example, Capitol near Parkville, Capitol Avenue, Laurel Street, Sigourney Street, Broad Street.
I'm talking about an overall discussion.
An overall discussion.
Project having input, like we're doing here for the station.
Okay, so maybe like a wholesale review of the current status of the design, looking segment area by area, and
how that interconnectivity is actually going to come.
I think the best way will probably be if we have our next meeting in August, which I think is what we need to do, focus on the station and spend some time going through that model and having a conversation about how are we doing with regards to making those strong connections between north and south of the freeway.
Thank you.
Okay, great.
Anything else on? Yes, Marcy, I meant, wrap it up.
It's always Marcy that's under the gun.
Yes.
That's okay, no one asks me any questions. Can you all hear me? I'm standing back. Okay, so I'll talk for just a minute about outreach. We last met on March 1st. Since then, we've had 2 open planning studios in April. We have spent a considerable amount of time enhancing our project website. One thing that we learned is this project is now 3-4 years old, and some of that initial loads and loads of information that we put up there was maybe not as important anymore, and so we spent some time enhancing that. We also did, Dave talked for a very long time about a survey, the driver preference survey, and we did a very small questionnaire about how we are doing public outreach, and that was online. We continue, and we've started our pop-up events this summer. We have gone out to NRZs, a couple we go to every month or every other month, and stakeholder meetings, and finally we do continue that school and youth outreach. So a little bit about our open planning studios. These have already been talked about, but we really focused on multimodal station planning, the interchange study, and the latest updates as they relate to the screening. The big difference with this is we had key workshops, particularly about the interchange study and the multimodal, and we heard a lot of great things. So thank you for those of you who came out. For our questionnaire, this was something that we posted online, and what our goal here was to try to understand what are we doing well, what are we not doing so well, what should we spend our money on in the future. And so we asked people to tell us what they thought. About 300 people responded in a 2-month period. And what it is doing for us is it's letting us know what people think about how we do things. What did we learn? Well, we do know that our email blasts work. So this is a 1,800 person list, and this is how most people who responded to this survey get their information about our project. They also, our media coverage has helped us out a lot. It gets people to the public meetings. Anytime the Hartford Current posts an article, we always get a wave of people to our website and to our meetings. People generally say about 2/3 of them better understand the project when they come to meetings, so they do serve a purpose. And 1/3 say that they do believe the process could achieve consensus. So this is a positive thing, because this maybe wasn't the case in the beginning. I think there was a lot of I don't want to say mistrust or distrust, but I think people were very concerned. So what are we doing now? Well, we're reporting back. We're filing this information away, and we're going to revise our strategies just a little bit. We've done a lot of outreach, but we do know that some of lower cost things and some of the things that we can bring out to all the different groups that we're not reaching need to be enhanced a little bit. So finally, this summer, what can you expect? We'll continue to go out to fairs and festivals around the city this summer. Interestingly, a lot of these have been people inviting us to new events, such as career days and other youth events. Very interesting. The youth outreach, like I said, that's our partners in the community, and that's been really interesting. I mentioned, I believe in March, that we are trying to repurpose the CT Fast Track kiosk that was in the mall, and we are making that our i84 kiosk. So we have started work on that. It's a big project, it's a big kiosk. And then finally, people at public libraries have asked us to have leave-behinds other than just newsletters that are more permanent in the libraries. So we are creating flip books that can be housed at each of the libraries in town and in East Hartford and West Hartford. And we are working on those and plan to get those into the libraries this summer. Finally, I just want to close with, if you have any suggestions on how we can enhance our outreach process, we'd love to hear from you, and we're always looking to improve. Thank you very much.
Jackie, I think that was our presentation, so any last
Just
questions?
I mentioned, currently, you're doing this major work on the viaduct. And of course, my first thought was, well, gee, why are we spending all this money now? When we're gonna rebuild the thing. And of course, the other part of me says, oh, the thing's probably falling down. But most people don't know that they don't have the information that I did. And it looks like, why are we spending so much money now versus in the future? You know, we're gonna spend even more money in the future. I think we need to talk more about that to the general public. Because I've seen little blurbs on TV about, oh, they're redoing I84, but that you're not saying that this is a temporary thing to get us through to when we have to replace it. So I think we should say more of that.
Yeah.
Because it goes a lot to credibility. Most people don't understand what we've been going through.
Sure, sure. That's a very good point. We'll make sure we include that, and it's on our website. We have a page or two devoted to it. So, but very good point. We need to make sure we include that in our public presentations. Thank you. David.
Question in regards to outreach. Are you also contacting and getting in touch with the activities within colleges, which will just increase them? You need that in.
So we have reached out with some, and interestingly, our kiosk, we're looking to have it at Capitol. And so if you have specific suggestions, we would love to hear them. Our school outreach to date has been with younger kids, middle school, elementary schools. We've done bulletin boards in 3 different schools now, and we go to parents' nights at the schools, but we're open to any age group. We just know that anyone who's younger than me is going to see this project, and they're going to be living in Hartford for a long time. So we're interested in all ages. Capital Community College is where we're hoping it will be.
I was going to say the new UConn campus opening in August.
Yep.
Well, an easy way to hit all of them would be work with the Hartford Consortium for Higher Ed, which would hit all of the higher ed institutions in the Hartford area.
Okay. So I'd love a contact if you have a name, because that will get a long way with getting us in the door and talking to them.
Great idea. Thank you, David. Anything else? All right, great. Thanks so much, folks. We'll plan something for August, and we look forward to seeing you then. Thanks.
My name is J. Stan McCauley, and I do business as Light Source Productions. I provide professional services in the area of strategic video communications. First, what we do is we help you craft your message using what I call the rule of the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, and why. We do event documentation, content acquisition, full-scale productions, editing, and of course distribution through our social media television network. And with social media, video is more important now than it has ever been. Whether you're talking big business, small business, nonprofit, church, or just an individual. Let's say you're planning an event, a wedding, whatever the case may be. But let's say a big event, but no video. And you spent all this time, all these hours to put this event on, and maybe 100, 200 people attend the event. But more important than that is that thousands could attend by watching it on social media. But of course, you don't think about this until after the event is over. You can't afford not to capture it for social media. And despite what people think, I am affordable. Give me a call. Let's plan your next video project and share it with the world on my social media television network. I promise you that you will have the attention of one person, me.